So, is the microphone working? PNB audio device is selected. Okay, so it's still very quiet. Sound settings, and oh look, Windows has cut it right back yet again. So it's working now, so that's good. I'm going to have to put the microphone right next to my voice because I can't talk too loud because it's late. And I'll drive the rest of the house absolutely crazy. So I'm just setting up my monitor of the live stream. So YouTube. So it won't be long, honest. So this evening is all about testing the Tobii Eye Tracker really with the big jets. So I thought obviously we'll make it difficult for myself and we'll use the Fokker, which requires a lot of work inside the cockpit. So it's going to be quite a stressful one for me, more than anything really. And obviously every time I look across at the live stream chat, you're going to see me looking sharp left across the cockpit. Unless I put the laptop in front of me. I may have to rearrange my desk slightly here, which would stop the sudden movements. That's not a bad plan actually. Right. You're not seeing any of this happening, of course. Just rearranging my desk to make this easier for me. Okay. So now I can start actually watching the live stream. Bear with me. Okay. So I'm going to go and turn on the head tracker, which is something like that. There we go. So we're now looking around the cockpit. So this is going to be fun. I've turned off the eye tracking because I think it may be quite a, well, not really a problem, but it might be difficult for me. Okay, so we're going to work through the start sequence. So we're looking for the battery switches to begin with, and the first one's here, isn't it? So battery goes to on. So I'm referring to the checklist at the same time, so you're going to see me looking down a lot. So overhead, APU section main to on. So this is going to be a bit of an exercise in retraining myself. Air conditioning, left main to on, so it's the third column. Okay. Yeah, this is harder than I thought it was going to be, but it's a really good test to see if I can train myself to tip my head accurately. Maybe the eye tracking would be helpful. So just to show you what I'm talking about. If we go into control options and we're looking at the Tobii stuff now, the Tobii profile. So the first thing is head versus eye tracking. I think it was on about 0.9 before. So if we go done, apply, go back, resume, it will now use my head and my eyes. So as I look around, it is actually quite useful because it helps you center on something. So as I look at a particular switch, it's actually stabilizing the view a little bit. Okay. So air conditioning section, left main to on, we've done that. So then it's the APU section. So we've had the good 10 seconds, we've had a couple of minutes since we last did that. So APU's over here. So we go and hit the start button for it now. And if we watch the needles, or sorry, the gauges, you can see the RPM is coming up. Yeah, the eye tracking is going to drive me around the twist. So I'm going to go and turn it back off. So this is really kind of, you know, trying this out properly. So we're seeing how we go. Oh, let me just check the volume level of the simulator itself. Open volume mixer. So flight sim's on 100%. So what about OBS? So it's turned down quite a lot. But I think, yeah, we'll leave it where it is. The interesting thing is I might have to end up using a headset rather than a boom microphone, because if I'm tipping my head around, I'm going to keep going quiet as my head moves away from the microphone. So I might have to use a headset if I'm doing head tracking. So once the APU started, which obviously it is now, we can go and turn the generators on already. Now I didn't do that. This hasn't got memory on it, has it, this aeroplane? Unless that's the middle position. This is where it's going to get really fun. There we go. So you can see I am struggling at the extremes of movement to do this. So this is where a VR headset obviously wins. And then bleed air to on or up, which is the top right switch. Okay, so central pedestal, master radio switch, rear right. So that's down here. Back overhead, the emergency exit lights, and arm them, which is there. As you can see, it's interesting, isn't it? Some of the switches in this aeroplane require the mouse wheel, some of them require clicks, and it's not always obvious. So windshield heating at the bottom right, we put both of them to low, so that's over here. And again, being accurate enough to do this, it becomes a real problem, look, because any small movement and the mouse misses the switch, which you can see happening. So again, this is a real acid test of I'm doing the most difficult task using head tracking, which is fiddly switches on a massive cockpit. So I'm doing it on purpose to really struggle so you can see the struggles involved. So then cabin altitude, we're going to be flying at 33,000 feet. So we're going to go and spin this. Obviously we can lean over closer to it, which is really handy. It's like watching a drunk person, isn't it? Okay. So then eyebrow panel, the no smoking and the fasten seatbelt signs. So they're just over here. I may need to adjust the null zones, I think, to make it not react to me moving my head too much, but we'll see. Master control panel, nav 1 to on. So this is again it'd be more and more fiddly switches. So this one needs to go to DME. And the other one, I'm going to have to lean over right the way across the cockpit. And we can't lean far enough. Yeah, this is going to be super difficult, isn't it? Heading as required. So let's go and have a quick look at LittleNavMap or Navigraph. Let's have a look at Navigraph actually. So we are at Rotterdam. We're going to take off runway 06, so we actually want 56 degrees on our heading. So this is going to be tricky. So can we get far enough away to see the heading knob and see the HSI? This is really, really tough. And if I had had head tracking on, that's about right. So obviously I can look down here really closely, but I can't reach across obviously to grab a real physical knob. So yeah, it's close enough. So you can see that the problem straight away. Something that is really cool though is once you're in the cockpit, you can go and look at things like the tablet. So I've done the integration with Simbrief today. Interesting. Look, I can't click on the button because it keeps rotating the tablet. So I can pull up the charts as well, so we can look at the departure. Standard instrument departures, or just the airfield map. It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, I probably look like a bit of a drunk person wavering around, but I'm doing this, you know, the difficult way on purpose, just to see what's possible and what isn't really. I think in reality you wouldn't use head tracking for setting the airplane up, which, you know, we can turn it off immediately if we want to, and just move around the cockpit in the traditional way that we have in the past, which would not be a problem. Yeah. So we could do that if we wanted to, but I think there is some value in really putting this through its paces and finding out how difficult it is. So we've done the heading bug, we haven't done pitch command, but then we're not really going to need it. So the pitch command moves the flight director, but we haven't got the flight directors on yet, so let's go and do that. So if you watch down here, that's interesting. So on the master control panel we've done the DME mode. Mode selector has to go to heading, which, oh, that gives you the flight director. Okay, that makes sense now. And then we can do the pitch command and put this to 10 degrees up, which has moved the guides. So in the course section in the center we can set the nav 1 and 2 courses as required. See, we're going to be nowhere near fast enough at changing things if we use this while we're in flight. So I think it's great for looking around, but not for programming things. I think that's the main takeaway. Unless you get really practiced at it, I guess. So if we look at our route, we want to go 163 degrees after takeoff towards the BUN VOR. So let's go and change these to 163. Okay, so then set the frequencies for them as required. So if we go straight for the BUN frequency, the DME is 110.6 with the Bruno VOR 110.6. Okay, so that's that done. So then calibrate the altimeter. Set the initial climb altitude. So we'll go for 10,000 feet for the initial, and then we'll go up to 33,000 feet afterwards. So center pedestal. Light section, nav light goes to on. If I can hold my view steady enough. Yeah, this is where it becomes a real problem. ATC transponder section, transponder mode to standby. So can I get my view to look at it? There we go. Squawk mode to C. This is so difficult. Prepare for engine start. So tablet, we go over and remove the chocks. So I'm going to recenter this. That's that done. Engine gauges. So down here we need to go and set the thrust index as appropriate. So it will be about 170, that's about right. Looking at, so 20 degrees outside. Refer to takeoff data card for the configuration of flaps. So we're going to be using 18 degrees flaps. And I've just clicked the card which sets the V speeds. We'll go and set the flaps while we're here. So 18 degrees. Central pedestal, gust lock removed. Can I get back far enough? There it goes. So this is really pushing the limits of using a head tracker to do this stuff. Light section, Anti-collision top and bottom to on. So it's done. Centre pedestal. Left booster pumps forward. So this is going to be tricky. Or maybe I'm just getting better at it. Overhead, start master to on or up. So where are the starter switches? I've got to try and remember now. Okay. So left engine start, overhead. So I have to remember how to do this now. Okay. Then we watch the RPM coming up. And then we advance. And we wait for 50%. We can lean right in on this. Just waiting for this to come up. I will check out the live stream chat in a moment. I'm just going through the checklist. There's too many things to do with head tracking on, and obviously if I start looking at the screen it's going to affect me quite badly. I think this is a really good example of the limits of what head tracking can do, really. So once both engines are running, which they obviously are now, we can go and turn start master to off. APU section, Gen 3 to off, air to off, main to off. So that shuts down the auxiliary power. Air conditioning section, so if you remember we only turned on the left one earlier. So at high angles the head tracking is failing slightly. Whether that might actually be because the tablet is in its way. I could have been causing that myself, so I've lowered the angle of the tablet to clear, or the microphone is doing it maybe. I'm going to get the microphone below my mouth so the head tracker has got a view of me. It hadn't occurred to me that the microphone was in the way, so it's been actually doing an amazing job to see me with the microphone in the way. So we've done that. So engine anti-icing, both to auto down. So that's over here. Windshield's done. Pitot and vane heating both up. So they are here. So prepare for taxi. We've done the flaps. We can check the flap position somewhere around here. It's over there, isn't it? Yeah, there we go, 18 degrees. And again, one of the things with head tracking, you can actually lean over there. Have a look. Set the trim as required, usually 5 nose up units. So I'm going to go and grab the stick. It's already on 5 now, which is good. So central pedestal, taxi light on or forwards. So there's the taxi light there. Oh, sorry, I only put it to the halfway point, which is extended but not on. Again, where some of the click spots are so tiny, that actually makes it quite challenging. So, getting ready for takeoff now. Damping goes forwards. Transponder mode to on. Landing lights to on. And extended. Strobes to on. To remember where things are. Oh, strobes are down here, aren't they? And then primary instrument panel, we can go and turn on the weather radar. Not that we're going to use it, but it switches on, which is quite useful. Set the range if we want. Okay, so we're ready to go. So let's sit in the cockpit properly. Move the microphone a bit closer to me. Move my chair across. So I'm actually seeing out of the cockpit. So let's have a quick look at LittleNavMap to see what the taxi out. So we go almost straight line and then off to the left and then rotate right. Although there are some things in the way. Whoa, what just happened? Yeah, oh, you know what just happened? This is a great one. I had it on a single engine. I've just cut the fuel. This is what happens if you don't follow your own checklist and check that you've got things in exactly the right configuration in the simulator. I have just used one of the throttle levers as the fuel mixture and cut the fuel to the entire aircraft. So what I'm going to do, if I can find the there it was. I hate that this isn't a drop down, by the way. Go back, resume. I'm going to cheat slightly.
Ready for takeoff selected.
And that will bring the engines back up. It will take it a little moment to do it. While it's doing that, let's just have a look outside. So head tracking works outside as well. But it doesn't work around the aeroplane. It works from your point of view. So obviously the engines are spinning back up as we speak. So this is an opportunity then for me to go and have a look at the live stream chat. But yeah, I think certainly for the big jet stand, just reading the chat, I can see people are kind of agreeing with the problems I'm facing here with being exact. I think what you would do is disable it for startup sequence and do it the traditional way. But then as soon as you're ready to taxi, you could switch over to head tracking and you'll be good. So you can see engine number 2 is coming up. Or the right engine. I'm not sure they're numbered in this aircraft, are they? So the crossfeeds just happened. Engine number 1 is coming up. There goes the fuel valve. Just continuing on. So they did it about 15%. They did it quite early. It does say in the book anywhere between 15 and 20 is good. I'm just playing around with the centering. At the moment I haven't got myself right in exactly the right place in the seat. There we go. So what I might do then, because the workload obviously is quite heavy during takeoff, so I'm going to turn it off just while we're doing the takeoff. So the engine's just coming up. If we do turn it on, it's quite cool because you can see for taxiing, it comes into its own. Unfortunately, I can't get the microphone right the way across the desk to where my head needs to be. It's being a real pain. Okay, let's just double check a few things then. So we've got the lights are all ready, flaps are at 18 degrees, fuel pumps are on, engines are good, all the switches are in the right places on my controllers as well.
Positive climb.
Okay, so we just don't have a signal yet. So we'll continue on. We need to move the heading bug then. So that had been reset. Okay, so we're on autopilot now, so we can relax a little bit and look around the cockpit. See what the engines are running at, so we need to pull those back a little bit, so 95%-ish. Turn the volume down in the room here. Okay. So as you can see, I've got the course and the heading lined up. We're getting a bit fast, so I'm going to come back off the throttle. Or we could go for a higher climb rate. We're going up to 2,000 feet a minute, which is good. Actually, looks like we're just coming back away from... We're going too fast though, we're below 10,000 feet, so let's cut the engines back. Let it fall to 250 knots, and then we'll increase the thrust again. So again, that's just saturation with looking at one thing and not, not paying attention. So I'm kind of worrying about the head tracking. The throttles are very quick to respond. So go for 90% in the thrust. We can always change the climb rate to maintain indicated airspeed. The other thing you can do is, move the... This is so difficult. Move this to 250 knots, for example. And then go to IAS mode instead of pitch mode. And it will follow the index. So we can go absolutely full throttle, for example. Which obviously isn't advisable because you'll break the engines. But then look at the... You can see the pitch coming up to maintain 250 knots if you can. So obviously it went too high. So I have no idea how good it is at doing it. So let's pull the engines back to 95%-ish. And see what it does in terms of pitch. So it's at about 5 degrees pitch at the moment, so we can go and move the guide down a bit. Remember, this guide is only a guide. And they do say in the book about a 5-degree climb, which is what we're on. We're absolutely nailing the climb rate. So 95% climb rate looks like you can do about just under 250 knots. We're coming up through 10,000 feet in a moment, which was our target, remember. So we'll continue on, if I can even grab the selector. Appear to be in some weather. So can we be really awkward now? Really close to the guy next to us. Oh dear. So we've just come through 10,000 feet, so we can now accelerate. So let's see what happens. So it's not reacting immediately to it. So I wonder if we have to disengage it and re-engage it. Because you would have thought it would want to put the nose down to accelerate. It's not doing that. So Dave is asking, can I ask, how are you able to lean with the Tobii, or is it moving on the D-pad? I'm not touching any movement controls, I'm doing everything. So I can tip my head sideways, I can look up and look down, and right and left, and I can move around as well. So if I roll backwards and forwards, and obviously, so if I lean across the cockpit, I can go other seats, so you'll obviously hear my voice moving away from the microphone when I do this sort of idiocy. So I can lean in and really see very closely at some of the, I can tip my head sideways if I really want to, and look at them at crazy angles. So yeah, I've got complete free reign of motion. It feels very odd, but I think it's something you just learn the muscle tracking, or say the muscle memory for. So Dirkster is saying it's under head tracking sensitivity, pitch and yaw. There is a couple of tricks I haven't talked about in videos yet. So is that the ice detectors come on? So we need to go and turn on the, if I can get the switches. Oh, that was already on. That was on auto. It's the ones further up, isn't it? I need to worry about these two. So we're just coming up to 15,000 feet. Ice detector's now gone in. Obviously, once you get cold enough and high enough, there's no risk of ice anymore, because it actually gets too cold for ice. Although that sounds bizarre. Okay, so Dave, yeah, so I need to do a video about this because I hit this problem. When I first installed it, I couldn't lean around. As bizarre as this is going to sound, it's your keyboard that's causing it. You've probably got a custom keyboard setting in the simulator. Go back to the default keyboard and copy it. It's, you know, so start again with your keyboard. Go from default, duplicate it, and call it Tobii or whatever you want to call it, and then map the reset head tracking button. So I've set it to F12 to reset you to the it's called reset home cockpit position, I think. It's not obvious at all. If you go and read the forums, I had to go and read because I couldn't get it working and I didn't understand what I'd done wrong. So yeah, it means you can translate. It won't translate unless you've done it. Otherwise you're just sat with your head in one position and you can look around, but you can't do that, for example. Which you should be able to. As you can see, I can do it. But it was because of the keyboard. I had to go back to a default keyboard. I'm guessing what's going on there is some setting in the keyboard profile has not got allowance for the head tracking. The bizarre thing is once you've enabled, so you need the enable head tracking as well mapped to a button on your keyboard. So once you, or a controller, once you have mapped that everything suddenly works, and it's like once you've activated it once, it works all the time. So it's obviously a bit of a kind of a logic problem in the sim itself. But so if I press F12, for example, you've noticed I've started to sink down. If I press F12, so it's not perfect, the head tracking. It does drift over time, but that's why you have a key to reset yourself. Have a look outside. Oh, we're above 10,000 feet when we turn the landing lights off. That's these ones down here, isn't it? So I'm just moving in my chair as well. So we have not been paying any attention, so I'm going to turn it off for a moment so it doesn't weave all over the place. So we're flying generally the right direction, but we need to change over to another VOR, so 113.10. So let's just get that done quickly. So there's the VOR, so we need to then change the course to fly straight towards it. So if we go beam mode, it might even, yes, it's going to go straight towards it. We're close enough that it can follow it. I think if the CDI is off by enough, it won't. I think it has to be within the first dot, so within that range there. Let's turn the head tracking back on. So there we go, we can look around the cockpit again. Should we have a look at some of this stuff in here now? So I've gone and configured this today. So we've got the operational flight plan now from Simbrief. So we can have a, we can see it now, and we can. How do we drag through it? Or can we not do that? Or we have to click on the bottom. Or not. Oh, there's a scroll bar. Sorry. So you can see the whole thing. So yeah, it's interesting though to try the Tobii out, and obviously for while you're in flight and just cruising along, it comes into its own for just looking around the cockpit. So we're locked in on the beam. We're counting down the numbers to the next waypoint. The one thing I haven't figured out yet is these. So at the moment that's showing nav2, even though the nav1 button is down. I think this might be a bug in the airplane, unless it always just shows nav2. Obviously the number at the top of the nav instrument, or the HSI, shows the nav1 reading. This is showing nav2. And then get back into it. That's quite amusing. Oh, we can lean in close enough to read some of these stickers and see the horrible solder jobs they've done on some of the sensors. It's a hell of a spring, isn't it? You think that would rattle? Maybe it does. So they have put clipping on the outside of this aeroplane. I can't force my head through the window. Down to 14 miles from the VOR. So let's go and have a look. Just coming in towards this one. So then we will leave this VOR on 153 degrees. So at the moment we're at 147. So we'll just change the course slightly when we go over the top of the VOR. Be interesting to see actually as we fly over the top. One thing we could do is change this now, and it will obviously cut the corner. Oh sorry, it will swing out to get 153 before we get there. It'll be interesting to see what happens when we go over the top of the VOR. If it loses signal and just goes to roll mode, and we have to switch it back to beam. So we're 7 miles out. It'll be an interesting one to watch, won't it? Let's get comfortable. Watch it do it. Yeah, I'll do a video about the problem with the head tracking with the Tobii. So we're now turning towards the track. Notice we're slightly off track. That's, if we press D, so that's not the cause of it. So the reason we are off track is because of wind. If we go and look in LittleNavMap, it give us, yeah, it's a 60 knot crosswind nearly, which is why we are off track by 10 degrees. So we've just gone over the top, yeah, look, we switched to roll mode exactly as I predicted. So now we're flying away and it hasn't gone back to beam, so we'll go back to beam now. So it's just something to be mindful of. We're now 5 miles past the VOR. So what we can do is go and have a look. LittleNavMap does this job a little bit better than Navigraph, because you can see it's a 60-mile track, and this has got a 60-mile range, the Luxembourg VOR, and we are within range of it now, so 112.25. So we could test this by putting Nav2 onto it, obviously because we're not using Nav2 for guidance. It hasn't picked it up yet, look. That's showing the Nav1 information. So if we go Nav2, you can't do split mode, can you? So it's gone back to roll mode because I've changed to Nav2, but can we... 48 miles... 47, yeah, so it's working, look. So if we go back to Nav1, we'll go to 112.25. If I can. This is a real pain. Let's get closer to that. And then go Nav1. and then beam. And this will now fly 44 miles and counting down onto the next VOR. We're still only at 29,000 feet, look. We went into IAS mode. And obviously we're running the engines at about 95%. Set that up, turbo gas. Force it up into the goal. You can really get that. It's going to struggle, isn't it? So the engines, maybe we're going beyond the ceiling of the average should look better. Obviously this is going to increase speed, so we need to keep an eye on it. Pull the indexer back in. For the IAS mode. Look at the map. So Chuck is saying, Jonathan, how do you like the plane? Do you think it's a great addition? I do. I think it's fantastic. It's probably one of the best planes in the game, or certainly it's got the most to do. I really like the old radio navigation, kind of the whole workload around it, and with charts and headings and beacons and measuring angles and forming a picture in your head of where you are in the sky. I really love doing that, so it really falls into my kind of wheelhouse of things I like doing. I used to love flying the BAE 146 for the same reason. I would always switch off the sat-nav to make it period accurate and fly it without it. So Newsoft in an earlier comment was saying, yeah, the DME over here always shows nav2. So it's worth knowing about. So you just use then the one on the corner of your... I think it might be wrong that it always shows nav2 because there's one over there as well. I think it should show nav1 regardless. Because they are two separate systems, but there's a duplicate over there, look. It's interesting because in the BAE 146 there's a split function as well as nav1 and nav2, where you see nav1 one side, nav2 the other. Or in split, they, if you have nav1 mode, both show nav1. On nav2, both would show nav2. And in split mode, you would see each on its respective side. The seatbelt sign off and let people get up and wander about. I think the head tracking, this is obviously a really extreme test of it, trying to operate a big jet using the head tracking. I think it really comes into its own with VFR flight, to be honest. Flying seat of the pants stuff with stall aeroplanes, stuff like that. Okay, it's a gimmick in the big jets, being able to look around the cockpit, but you make life very, very hard for yourself. And the speed you sometimes have to work at, it's a hindrance. So So Solo 6R is saying, I just did my first flight with this plane in the Horizon Air livery from Redmond, Oregon to... Oh, there's a heart icon in the way, I can't read your comment. To somewhere in Arizona. Sedona, is that? I can't see half the word. It's interesting, isn't it, that this mode selector is, it's for the flight director, but unlike a lot of the planes that came along after this, there's no connection between the flight director and the autopilot. So the flight director shows you what it thinks you should be doing, but then you command it with the autopilot controls. So I had a really good read of the book about this, just to confirm that, and I was quite surprised. Yeah, there is no connection between the two. The flight director is really just advising. It's not telling the autopilot anything. It's up to you to do it. Which is, a very safe walk. People would argue these days maybe it's not safe to have the human making the decisions, but there we go. Cold at this altitude. We're up to nearly 33,000 now. It's taken a long time to get here. I think we're maybe... Should we have a quick look? We open the browser and we go for Fokker F28 ceiling. 35,000 feet, so we're not far off the ceiling. Okay, that would make sense then of why we're seeing the engines running so cold. They're not in their comfort zone at this altitude. So maybe what we should do is come back down to say 20... We're heading east, so we're going odds. Head back down to say 27, 28 or 29,000 feet. So if we go indicate airspeed mode, we need to pull in the speed indexer. Whoops. Again, keep missing with the mouse. So it's going for 500 feet a minute in IAS mode. Obviously, if we pull the throttles back further, it should dump the nose. And that's the klaxon going off because we haven't got the wheels down on the amount of thrust we've selected. So I've increased the throttle. You can get rid of it. There's a horn silencer button down here. So having dumped the nose, we've gone down to 1,000 feet a minute. So it's pretty good, isn't it, at managing that? So we're coming down now towards 29,000. Obviously, if I increase the throttle this back down, the vertical speed, you'll see it climb back away. So we just really gently fall back down. So about 200, 300, 300 feet a minute or thereabouts. Which is fine, we're not in a hurry. So we've got 15, we've gone past the VOR by 15 miles. Let's have a look at where we are then. Yeah, we're almost onto the next one. So the next one we'll be going for that's a sensible angle to be programming in from where we are is the Strasbourg VOR 115.60. So let's go do that. So we'll put ourselves in heading mode first, which we are already. Well, it's going into roll hold. So, what did we say? 115.60. touch the things before you do them, rather than relying on a huge screen with high resolution and not moving. So 128 degrees will be the whole one. So this should tell us we are 64 miles from 64 miles. So when this sweeps in, when it gets inside the first dot, it's coming in now, we can start moving. When it gets inside the closest dot, we will switch over to beam mode, or we could help it by just moving the heading bug as well. But we're not going to do it yet. The reason for it, obviously, we're not there yet, so there's no point turning just yet. So you can see the angle we will be turning to is 120, what was it? 128. So yeah, Solo 6 are saying I find using beam mode isn't as accurate. No, it won't be, because the old radio kit wasn't as accurate at tracing the VORs as the modern kit. This plane's old. So getting it to chase a radio signal, there's a high degree of variability in that, depending on atmospheric conditions, the strength of the radio signal, all sorts of things, and how good the hardware is in the aeroplane, which in these old planes it just isn't very good. We've all been spoiled basically by wonderful GPSs. Putting us into heading mode, and I've moved the heading bug marker closer to the VOR. So if you want to watch it line itself up, all we have to do is click on beam mode, and the plane is actually rolling into it, look. It's going to expedite getting onto the track. Obviously we're quite high at the moment. If we go and have a look at the way in, a couple more VORs to go through, but then we end up having to get to the beginning of the standard arrival route, or terminal arrival route, at 17 or above 17,000 feet, and then we can follow. We're going to do this RNAV approach through the hills. RNAV just stands for area navigation. So we'll be doing it partly visually, hopefully if it's clear, following the headings and the altitudes on the way in. Should be fairly straightforward. So just to give you some idea, Sion is at 1,500 feet, or Sion, sorry, is at 1,580 feet above sea level. So we probably need to be here at about 4,000 feet. But it looks like it's a steep glide slope. We can check that in Navigraph. Let's go and have a sneak at the chart for Sion. See, we haven't put the arrival in yet. Let's go and choose the ILS. Oh, sorry, no, we're doing area nav, aren't we? So if we go and look at the RNAV approach here, does that give us... doesn't give us much information, does it? So let's go and look at the charts for the airport. Let's pin the other chart as well so we can look at it and compare it. So this has got the ILS on it. But look, the ILS finishes a long way. It's offset. This is what they call an offset ILS. So there is no point in using it. We'll just go visual on the RNAV approach. Yeah. Funny, Solo 6R is saying they wouldn't mind a study level 727. Wouldn't we all? So we're down to 29,000 feet. I'm going to push the throttles out to 95%. Just so we don't get too slow. So the airplane's automatically gone into height mode to hold the height. It's still in beam mode. So we're counting down. We're 22 miles out from the VOR. So let's go and have a look at where we are in the world. So the next VOR will be BLM 11745. So what we could do is put ourselves on heading mode. So if we go and move the heading bug to the exact heading we're going, and then change the frequency over to 117.45. We've already picked it up, but we want to be doing the 180-degree course into it. We've got a right turn. Yeah, and obviously we're off to the right of the track. So if you're not aware, if no one's ever explained this to you, this means this is our little aeroplane. There's the track. So it's really, hang on, let me centre this up. So there's our aeroplane. There's the track relative to us, but we are off to the right of the track. Is really wavering around. It's having trouble seeing me for some reason this evening. It's probably the light shining off my forehead. I think I was just too close, to be honest. Yeah, there you go. It's much better if you're a little bit further away. We're coming in towards the beam, so we can go for beam mode. The airplane's going to turn in towards the beam now. And counting down 50 miles. Just reading the comment from Bolt Kogan, yeah, I'm kind of making this a lot more difficult for myself because I'm playing around with this Tobii head tracker, or eye tracker, sorry, at the same time, which is making the time required to react to things. I'm having to stay a long way ahead of the aircraft. So this is my second ever time using the Tobii head tracker, which is great for, you know, the immersive qualities of it. But it's been fun. Yeah, I really love doing the more analog stuff. It gives you more to think about. Yeah, this overshot on the turn. That's impressive though, that on beam mode it's straightened itself back out. And we've still got that crosswind to deal with, obviously. My dad's got a G2 headset. Oh, we're overspeeding. Whoops. Not by much, but still have to get into trouble. Just watching the needle there. So yeah, my dad's got a G2 and I've had to play with that. It works really nicely. So let's see what the next leg is. So we've got 40 miles to go. Obviously it's tracking, and yeah, we've got 50 knot crosswind, so it's no wonder that it's struggling a little bit. So the next one will be a wheel 11690. So should we put that on Nav2 and see if we can pick it up? So what we'd have to do is put ourselves on heading mode. So I think the needles represent whichever one of these is pressed. It doesn't have like a split mode. So what I'd have to do is put ourselves on heading mode. And then go Nav2, and then you can see, yeah, we're almost, that's fascinating though, isn't it? So we want to be going 146 degrees as we get there. Now that reflects what's actually going on here, so that will come in as we get closer. So we need to lose 10,000 feet as well, or 12,000 feet actually. So once we get through what's it called, the Basel Mulhouse VOR, we'll start descending. So we've got 70 odd miles to descend, so not a problem. Probably only need about 20 miles to lose 10,000 feet. Yeah, Bolt Kogan is saying flying this really makes you appreciate, yeah, the modern hardware is great, isn't it? Especially the FMC and the Boeings, with all the stuff you can do around programming custom waypoints and beam courses and things like that. It's great fun. You can pretty much invent whatever route you like on the chart straight from the FMC. You can draw lines on it, you can draw circles on it. It's very clever, and it does the the mode that I don't think it's been implemented in the Airbus yet. The 737 has the altitude plot as well, doesn't it? The side view of your course. It's really nice. So Rick is saying, first time in Fokker. No, I've flown it a couple of times now, so it's becoming quite familiar. So it's just learning all the little intricacies, like, you know, that there is no split mode. So both of the instruments are going to show whichever button is pressed. It's little things like that. And the weird thing we've discovered, that the secondary DMEs always show nav2 regardless. I'm not sure if that's a bug. I need to read the book on that one. So we got 45 miles to run until the next. So let's go and change this to 116.90. So we don't confuse ourselves. Just reading Bolt Hogan's comment, that's great. It's interesting, isn't it, though, how much... I was talking to somebody about this, how much with a new aeroplane, when you're not quite sure how things are working or where you should be looking, saturation of workload becomes a massive problem really quickly. But, you know, you just drop the ball, basically. And you end up, what is it they say, you end up behind the aeroplane, which is the recipe for disaster, basically. So we're coming in on the turn for the next leg. So once it gets, it'll be interesting actually to read the book on this to see what it says, but I know most aircraft of this era, you wait for the CDI to get inside the dot, at which point, you know, you'll get a guaranteed capture. So I'm just waiting for that. Then if we go to beam mode, obviously we could straighten ourselves up on heading mode. Let's try it. So will it turn right into the beam? We're kind of at about the 45 degrees closure angle anyway though, so it'll probably be fine with it. Should put it on nav 1. Ah, now that put it into roll mode, remember, when I selected. So again, it's one of those things where you drop the ball. So Rick Rashid saying, what navigation app do you use and is it free? I use both LittleNavMap, which is free and is very good, and Navigraph, which is paid, but it has the charts. So if you are studying or you're interested in, you know, real world aviation, Navigraph's worth it, purely because of the charts, so you become familiar with what they look like. So you can see there's our chart is overlaid onto the IFR map. So we're going to start descending now for what else did we say? We have to be at 17,000. Well, we have to be above it actually. So let's go on. Okay, I'm turning it off for a while so I can just get this done. So if we go indicated airspeed mode and pull the engines back, we can manipulate the descent rate using the throttles. So see there's the mountains out ahead of us. If we go and look, as long as we stay on the track, one of the other tricks that LittleNavMap has up its sleeve, for most areas of the world you can get an elevation plot. So underneath our flight plan, that's where we're heading for, so we need to be mindful of this. Look, so there's our 17,000 feet marker at the start of the standard arrival. So there's our nav arrival, and then we just basically follow looks like a 3.6 degree approach all the way in. But we basically follow the valley, just to show you that on the map in LittleNavMap, because it draws it quite nicely. I've got an unofficial add-on for LittleNavMap which puts Google Terrain in the background, which is really clear, very obvious. So you can see we're going to be flying basically along the valley, so we can do all of that visually. We just need to mark off our altitudes along the way to make sure we're descending at the right sort of rate. But we can see that very visually in LittleNavMap as well in here. So we can change the vertical scale on this as well, which will help us. I'm probably going to get this wrong. No, here we go, it's done it. Yeah, I've done it a bit too much. But obviously then you can see we can make this bigger as well. So you can see where you are from a vertical standpoint. That's probably a good enough. Yeah, there we go, look. So we can see on the way in where we are, whether we need to climb or descend. So it's cheating really, but in the real world you'd have to study this chart and it gives you the reference altitudes on the way in. So if you look along here, look, you've got the heights written in at various distances, which you can use as you fly along the valley. But yeah, area navigation is pretty straightforward, to be honest. So again, because the workload is going to be higher. So JP Devlin is saying, impressive you can do this without formal flight training. I'd be happy to take you up in a real PA-28 and let you control it. I'm based in North Weald. One day maybe. I have flown a plane in the past. The guy that used to live next door to me was a son of a RAF, somebody quite senior. He was an ex-fighter pilot, and he ended up training people to fly VC-10s out of Bryce Norton. And his son was learning to fly. He was a teenager, or early 20s by then, I guess. And to get his hours up, he was taking friends up in the plane if they would help fund him. We haven't descended, have we? This hasn't done the descent. I've just noticed it. So what we're going to do is go for pitch mode and use the pitch control. Which is a far more dangerous way to do it, but it will work. At least we're below 250 knots though, hey? So Rick is saying, does it show taxiways? What, the LittleNavMap? Yes, it does. So what happens in LittleNavMap? It starts off not knowing anything. You go into the scenery library menu and you load scenery library, and it reads the scenery data from Flight Simulator, even including all your add-ons. So then when you zoom in on an airfield, you see everything. But this comes straight out of the simulator. Yeah, so it makes an approximation of what it looks like from the sim itself. Obviously, if you do the same in Navigraph, you don't see anything if you zoom in on an area chart, because you're just seeing a piece of paper. If we go and turn that chart off and zoom in, you do get the airfield drawn. This is fairly new that it does this. You can get a VFR map as well, which shows you nearby visual references. But obviously the trick that Navigraph has really got, that LittleNavMap doesn't have, is actually drawn diagrams as well, so the real plates. from Jeppesen. Although they are from Jeppesen, but they all say, because they are in the simulator, they've got a disclaimer on them, but they're identical to the real things in most cases. It's obviously an insurance thing, making sure people don't try to use them. So you can see we're heading down, we need to change course. And so why is... Okay. I need to start concentrating really. 160 degrees probably. So we'll go heading mode. So again, this is all going to be vectors from now on. We need more than that because of the crosswind. Again, in the real world, with doing this vector flying in a plane like this, you would have a flight computer in your hand, a physical flight computer. The GA version of it is called a CRP1. I've forgotten the code name of the air transport pilot variant of it. What am I doing? Bolt Hogan saying they use the same as so funny. But yeah, you'll probably be able to answer this one actually. Yeah, can you remember the name of the flight computer, the one they use? Is it CRP5? Is it the big jets use? Or used to use, I guess, before? It's basically a circular slide rule, and you can calculate wind offsets, you know, for flying in a crosswind accurately. And you can calculate times, distances. It's like a giant slide rule, basically. EB6, that'll be the one. But yeah, the GA variant of it, the one I've got up here on the shelf, I haven't done a video with it yet, I need to get around to it, is a CRB. We're above 250 knots, so we're nowhere near 10,000 feet yet. The one I've got is a CRP1. It's just got less conversion factors and stuff on it. It's funny, JP Devlin was saying, yeah, that no one touches it after their exams. I've heard that from lots of people. It's pretty much a relic now, isn't it, because of GPS. But if you GPS... It's funny, I know somebody that flies on group flights with us. Great guy called Lee. And I think he said he had his GPS fail on him. And he had to go back to kind of, you know, old school techniques to get home. So it just shows, you know, you can't completely rely on all the electric doodads. I think one of the exercises I might do on the YouTube channel at some point is flying by dead reckoning with calculations of wind speed and aircraft speed and going over what, you know, true airspeed means and all that kind of stuff. So Ronnie's saying I sound tired. I'm trying to talk quite quietly because it is late and I don't want to keep the rest of the house up. So I'm a bit like whispering Ted Lowe. People probably won't get that reference. He was a snooker commentator in the 1980s. So we're coming back in, we need a couple of degrees left now. It's 30 knot wind, so how are we doing on altitude? We're pretty much on the money, look, we're going to be down to 17,000 feet for the turn at the rate we're descending, although the descent rate has just come off a little bit. So I think it's going to be that valley over there. We'll see ourselves on this. You can see we're appearing in the picture at the moment. So let's go and force this down at a little bit steeper angle. We're watching the indicated airspeed over there. Oh, sorry, the descent rate. vertical speed, that's what I meant to say. You're right, I'm tired. If we get down in one piece, with me being this tired, it will be a miracle. But as I said earlier, for anyone that's just joined the channel, the reason I've turned the head tracking off is I need to get too much done in a hurry during the descent, so I can't be messing around with the Tobii, which is great for, I mean, we can do it now for a minute or two. If I go and turn it back on, if I press numlock, go, and press F12 to centre it up. So it's great and it's very immersive and all the rest of it, but yeah, especially flying somewhere like this where you can go look out the windows, which I think that is really where it excels, is with the VFR flight. But when I need to be looking around the cockpit quickly, changing things, it's not such a great idea. So let's go and turn it back off for a moment. And we're going to go to height mode and stop the airplane from descending any further. 17,800 feet. We need to be above 17,000, remember. We're not quite there yet. We're just coming to the turn. So we need to turn now 226 degrees. So we're in heading mode. So let's go and spin this round to 226. Oops. So it'd be worth noting we'll be going directly into the wind almost, so we probably won't have as much wind shear now. And we need to begin that, or continue that descent. So where we were in height mode, we're now going to go back to pitch mode and force it to start descending. One of the huge advantages now is you can see that descent rate happening here. So if we go for 2,000 feet a minute. I've just pulled the throttles back too much. So we're getting the gear horn going off. Yeah, we're still not descending steeply enough. Pretty much. Look, it's just jumped back. Oh, it's hit 17,000 and it's gone to height mode, that's why. It's my bad. And now it won't release it. Ooh, have we got a bug? Why won't it release height mode? Let's try turning it off. No, it is stuck on height mode. I think we got a bug. Okay, I'm turning off the autopilot and hand flying it in. It's the only way, isn't it, sometimes? Is it because we're at 200? I mean, we can see the way in. It's not really a problem. So if we're going to hand fly this, we may as well go to head tracking. So about 2,000 feet a minute we're looking for, and we're on 2,000 feet a minute, so I can just regulate this by hand now. So 250 knots. I don't want to go much faster than that because we need to get down to 250 at 10,000 feet. something we could do on the way. Just going to have a quick look at... Yeah, we come a little bit off the course, but it's fine. I just want to go and set 250 degrees for the course. So so at least this makes some sense. But what we're seeing on the HSI, this is a real pain. I'm going to turn this off for a moment. This is what I said about this will become a problem. We could even go and tune in this. It's interesting, isn't it? The real chart shows this way further up the valley, but the simulator has got it somewhere else. 110.7, 244 degrees. So the actual runway is 250, but this is 244, so slightly offset. 110.70. On Nav1. So this is now showing runway relative to us, and we'll see the glide slope probably. Yeah, we're slightly below the glide down. We're now going above it. So we'll drop the nose. Pull the throttle back a bit further. The tail speed brake, the bum flaps. Brilliant. So you can see we've already picked up the glide slope, which becomes really useful for managing this approach, and we're coming in, look, towards that approach. So we're going slightly above, so we'll just drop the nose. We can go put the tracking back on there. I'm going to turn it off for the moment. It's one too many things to have to think about. We're going way too fast. So nose up. This may be a job to slow it down, and if I come down, we might have to circle. We can see the airfield. It's way down there. It's a steep approach, isn't it? So I think it's going to be spoilers and flaps all the way. So our main concern is to get the speed down, then we can make the plane really draggy. So here comes the speed coming off. So don't worry too much about the height at the moment. So at 200 knots we can drop the wheels. Now we can start to drop the flaps, and then you can see the runway down there. We've just deployed everything to slow us down. So we can come in at a crazy steep angle now. Yeah, if we let it descend very quickly, terrain warning. No surprise there then. Yeah, there's some big mountains out the window. So what we're really looking for is the glide slope to come back to us. come off the spoilers. And just let the flaps slow us. So we're holding 140 knots at idle in this steep descent. It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's saying, remember I've left this on the runway direction, I've not got it out. Was it 244? The actual glide slope, but I don't think, because it's a localizer, it's not going to affect it. So it actually wants us to come in over this side. We're still incredibly high looking at the glide slope. So I'm probably just going to go visual and bring it in. Because obviously you'll get to a decision altitude anyway. So let's straighten this up and bring it in. Just loading assets in on the ground and stuttering, isn't it? It's stuttering badly. It's one of the only major failings of this simulator. Hopefully in the new version they'll address that. Oh, I didn't quite make the turn. I was hoping we would. Did it light the brakes on fire? No, they got warm. No, it wasn't buttered. I kind of ended up plonking it straight into the ground to get down and get the wheel brakes on and get the air brakes out. I was a bit late touching down, to be honest. And now, while playing with the views, I've gone late here as well. At least we kept it on the hard stuff though. Okay, so landing lights can come off. The car is about to do his usual suicide trick straight into us. Strobes can come off. And we can keep off the grass. This is the problem of having one person doing everything, isn't it? So should we go and turn the head tracking back on so we can look around and throw ourselves completely off with the taxi. It's a Kodiak we're about to wipe out with our starboard wing. One day I'm going to make an add-on for Flight Sim which turns all the vans into ice cream vans, and they'll play the tunes as they run around the airport. It would be really good if you could have like a stream of children chasing after them as well, wouldn't it? Maybe they stop now and again and serve a few ice creams. Can I replay the landing? I don't think I've got the replay tool switched on. I think you have to have it on, don't you, for it to keep the cache of where you've been. And I haven't got any add-ons that do replays usually. I'm just trying to remember where the parking is here. Am I on the wrong side for the big jets? No, that's the engineering hangars, isn't it? Is it right at the far end? That's Sion. Yeah, I think the big parking area is up this far end, isn't it? I think the interesting thing this evening was really looking at the head tracking and where its limitations are. And yeah, the big jets, it's a novelty, but when you need to hit lots of systems or any airplane in a hurry, it doesn't really work. Where it excels is in simple aeroplanes without too many controls, where you can just look around while you're flying. So the little stole planes like the Zenith, things like that. There's, you know, the Kit Fox. That would be great fun. But the big jets, it's more of a struggle. All the vans seem to want to probably come and arrest me for such a bad Arnav approach. Yeah, there's nowhere to park a big plane here, is there? What's over the other side? Should we cross over the runway? Oh, I suppose this is the right place to go, isn't it, over here? Something big. He's waiting for me, look. Should we go and turn around and run him over? Clout him with the wing. I think he just went under it by about 6 inches. There's even more parking up around the back of here. Oh, this is us here. I've had enough. Is that a forklift coming along to pick the bits up? We're not wonderfully on the line, but it'll do. Just straighten up. Okay, what do we need to do? Can we get external power on the tablet? So if we put the chocks in and ground power, so that gives us, does it, oh yeah, it does put an actual unit there, brilliant. So then presumably up here, I've not actually tried this before. So there's external. So I don't need the APU on. That must have been the when we had that problem at the start, it put the APU back on and didn't turn it off. So it started the engines and left the APU on, which is interesting. So their automated sequence is wrong. Because normally after you get the engines running, you would turn the APU back off. That can come off. The anti-collision lights can come off. Whoops. The nav lights can come off. I thought I turned all the landing lights off on the way in. The co-pilot turned them all back on again. Oh no, I turned them on the way in, didn't I? Yeah. I should have turned... I thought I turned them off when I was taxiing. Or did I only do strobes? I can't remember now. I think it's just fascinating to see what's simulated. So we're on external power now, so we can cut the engines. We can see the engines die. It's a fascinating aeroplane, isn't it? So that's all can go to off now. If you can get it there. That's all off already. That can go to off. You know, don't ever fiddle with the UHF stuff. So the generators can come off. Generator 3 is already off. We don't mess around with the rectifiers. So external power off, and then batteries off, and we should be cold and dark. So in the tablet, I've not played with this really, so can we do forward passenger? So no, actually let's put this back up before you, if you've not seen this, this is quite fascinating. So if we go and open the door, these work. All these work as well, I think. So you can do stuff like stewardess phone, high and low. Obviously that's going to be a bit of a step down there, and but I think once you've done this you can push yourself out of the door. Yeah, and we can go a certain distance from the plane at least to look outside. It's very cool, isn't it? So Rick is asking how much was the mod. I can't remember. It's about 50 euros, 40 euros, something like that. It just needs a magic tree new car scent around the compass. It does, doesn't it? That would be funny. I don't think the window's open or anything like that. So let's see what else we can do in here. So we've got forward cargo door. Just opened there. Very cool. The aft cargo door just opened. And what does jetway do then? Oh, okay, it drops the rails so a jetway can connect. That's fascinating, okay. Within the aircraft, actually, it's worth pointing out there's a menu here. So if you do want GPS, you can have it. It puts a GNS 530 in for you. But obviously it's not wired up to the avionics, so it literally is just a visual aid. But, you know, if it's important to you, then that's fine. What's a hush kit? Presumably that just puts ear defenders on you so it's not so noisy in the cockpit. State saving would be cool, wouldn't it? So unless you look after the cockpit, you're going to get into it and it'll be a mess with all the switches in the wrong places. I don't think it's models, consumables. I'm not sure. So charts, aircraft, notes. Obviously, there's a little notepad there. You can go and write stuff in. Checklists. So it's got some checklists built into it. Chopper descent calculator, nice to have, and some settings for the tablet. But yeah, it's good, isn't it? I'm not sure how many Easter eggs there are around the aeroplane, you know, hidden features. I saw somebody mentioning the other day that the seat works. Presumably there's different click spots on it to make it unfurl or something. Or maybe it doesn't. That's interesting. They haven't implemented... Oh, it has. It's got the oxygen release. Very cool. Does it make a noise? Okay, where's the pilot's one? Maybe he hasn't got one. Maybe it only is on the co-pilot side. I love the parking brake cable. That you can see the actual cable move. It's all a bit Heath Robinson in places, isn't it? Oh, we didn't turn off some of these switches. Anyway. Where are the cup holders? Does it have any? I'm not sure. There's just a hole in the fascia for you to put your coffee cup in. Unless you're one of those pilots that turned up on the news the other week, where it was on. Was it a 737 or an Airbus? Where they propped their coffee on the throttle levers, didn't they? Absolute. I think they both got fired for it. But they took a photo of themselves with the coffee propped on there. Absolutely unbelievable. But yeah, it's a fascinating aeroplane. It's lovely that they've modelled so many things in it. Apparently they haven't finished working on it either. There's going to be updates to it to introduce failure modelling. So you'll be able to make the aeroplane go wrong. And then, you know, work through the proper procedures. I'm a little bit worried why there's an exposed wire here. Manual control, and it works. Oh look, we've just broken it. Depressurization is that? I'm not sure. Anyway, it's getting late and I am properly tired now, so it's 2 o'clock, so I'm going to go and call it a night, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching, everybody.